psychological illness that we're suffering from that's just beginning to come to a boil. But two, the thing I wanted to say first place is, I could go ahead and tell you exactly what's up with him and teenagers and their political views right now. Our operator is brilliant, but it's not. Again, I'm not. This is something that I'm not gonna call him on it yet. We have no reason to damage this guy. You brought it up. Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to say that yes, there is a reason why he's so fixated on this.
It just seems weird because it's come up twice now.
It's not an accident. It's not like that's not a one-off kind of random tangent. There is a specific reason for him specifically why this topic comes up.
Bashing teenagers, which again, in the last couple of minutes we've given a kind of a pros and cons list about why you would want to, listen to younger people and not. So there are pros and cons here. We're not saying that, all these, I've seen the videos of, these liberal arts colleges, people getting shouted down for the littlest of, microaggressions or whatever the hell that means. And literal riots and death threats on the part of, because, you're like a virtue signaling kind of situation, groups and mobs, scary mobs of, college kids flipping out. So obviously it's gotten to a little bit of a dangerous level here. But I still think, I have some younger people in my life and my family, and I think it's valuable to at least try to see that perspective when dealing with stuff, like he says, the politics of crisis management, whether it's environmental or economical or whatever the case may be. That perspective from a younger person and their fears and hopes for the future could be valuable to solving some of those problems, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. And
if taken seriously,
I mean, but to again view things in reverse, we're being heavily influenced by the younger folk, and mind you, I do.
Yeah, that's how it's supposed to go. It's the passage of time,
right,
generations.
Exactly. They're going to be our future, so we should be invested in influencing them to some degree with the positive values we have to offer instead of just striking, pandering to their insecurities and striking at whatever comes across as being unacceptable.
Neither of those things are effective.
But we're going to strike against the things that are unacceptable because this behavior
verbally
is unacceptable.
Or whatever, yes, but it's I think in terms of fight fire with fire has never really been very effective. So in terms of how they're behaving with the mobs and the riots and the that kind of stuff, it's obviously that's unacceptable. Right. And doing the same thing.
We only fight fire with fire in one scenario, which is the scenario of spotcasting and or social programming. And if we are doing that on this channel, believe me, we will let you know it's happening.
And it's also
it happens by accident, though.
It's more of a passive thing. Yeah, it's more of a passive thing, which I think
If we're deliberately casting you, we will tell you that we're doing it.
Oh, all right. I forgot where he was going. Oh, yeah, computer programmers compared to
specifically 50-year-old computer programmers have something to do with it.
Sure.
Right.
Let's continue.
We have the ultimate situation in which those who have the technical expertise to inform public policy are themselves the least able, the least eloquent to do so. They are even less eloquent than 16-year-old Greta Thunberg, who obviously is speaking with no life experience, with no technical knowledge, so on and so forth.
That was a nice eye roll that he just gave the camera as soon as he brought up Greta. Just God, she's so dumb. Her again.
She's mentally retarded.
So that was kind of cute. I like his little eye roll. He's pretty frustrated with her, I guess. That's funny. He does kind of have a point about the people, who are put in charge of such things as dealing with, giant problems are usually the least qualified to do so, which is unfortunate. But again, like his last video is talking about celebrities ruling society, then yes, that's done. It's done. That's done, basically.
Yeah, and
I mean,
honestly, I'd like to talk about, I'd like to have a
reality
very
TV show
serious,
star.
honest discussion about who the fuck is qualified.
that's true. And who qualifies the qualifier? Again, I'll say it again. It's a never-ending loop. So we have to.
Basically, it's going to be a matter of decision. It's going to be a matter of owning your responsibility, stepping up and making the decision
Yeah, I
to
think-
be influencing, and then, taking the punches, rolling with the punches as they come. I mean,
Responsibility is a big part of it.
Nothing makes you determinably qualified for any of this, most especially fucking politics. Like,
Right.
where do you get your certification in being a politician, and what does it entail?
No,
How
originally.
well you can lie to people?
Right. Originally, politicians were not meant to have careers in politics. You're supposed to serve your country and then go back to whatever career or farm or whatever you were doing before, so that somebody else can step up and try their hand at that responsibility for a short period of time, and so on and so on. And so it's become perverted, this process of people being career politicians, and it's wrong. It doesn't make any sense, and all it does is fuel just bad, profit motive and corruption, and it's just a bad place to start. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, certainly it's a bad place to finish, for sure. But
Hey, we're not finished here, man.
Yeah, technically that is what we are doing, though.
Well, now it is, but like I said, that's not what it was supposed to be.
No, I mean us, with the initiative. That's what we're doing. Whoa. We are finishing something. We are completing a cycle. We're moving into a new one. So
That's a natural progression.
we can't afford to finish on that note, wherein we have these, like, he's going to talk about being ruled by celebrity culture, and say that, it's ruining democracy. And I'm going to say my personal opinion, we're ruled by scheming politicians. Like, what exactly are you fighting for here? Because, I mean, I trust Greta Thunberg over Donald Trump any fucking day of the week. I think that she has our best interests
that's
in
funny.
mind for the most part, and I think she actually has somewhat of an idea as
Right.
how to go about it that doesn't involve stealing the taxpayers' money to build a wall as a
Or any
testimony
kind of-
to your fucking ego.
Any kind of corrupt type of intention, I feel like, if it's between some creepy corrupt politician and an actress or an actor, like,
Yeah, there's very few politicians that
So-
I feel are trustworthy to any
Right,
degree,
exactly.
and then
so what difference does it make if it was Tom Cruise or
Right.
if it's Joe Biden or whatever? Like, it's. I guess I get where he's coming from, trying to kind of plant the flag in keeping democracy strong. That's
Right.
cool. I'm all for that.
in a sense.
But again,
But I mean, it's working for essentially it's seemingly to protect or to maintain a system we have in play that we know is wrong.
pretty much.
I mean, it's like, no, don't do that. That's not correct.
But that's the ride that we're all on here together. Like, that's something that no one individual can take responsibility for the state of things.
Well,
We all have to take responsibility for that
yeah,
to some
that's
degree.
that's a tricky question or a tricky query to
But if-
bring into play.
But if some actress or some Swedish teenager wants to handle a small bit of that responsibility, then why not?
if somebody's like, I mean, believe me, I can speak from my own perspective on here, being a director in the network, that very few people are willing to step up and take responsibility and to try and make a difference. It takes a whole hell of a lot
Even for little
to
stuff.
get people to step up on the smallest issues, which, mind you, speaking to Bonnie 111, subscriber 111, he actually did fucking the most impressive thing I've seen in a long time. He was apparently kind of I don't want to, like, you know, make him seem in any way negative here, but it seemed like he was somewhat frightened about stepping up and working with the project, working with the Kundalini course. And, you know, he said that he would like, maybe he just needs to take some more time for self-reflection. And I said to him, listen, that's what you've been doing and it's not working. So why don't you take the opportunity you have here, step up and make a difference, make that decision. And on the fucking spot he did. He is the first student I've ever had to do that, to take the first chance and say, okay, I'm going to change my mind and do something different,
Jump
and
in
actually
head
put
first.
myself up here and take a chance.
Tip of the hat to you, sir.
Yeah.
That is impressive.
Kudos. Badass.
Yeah, that is impressive. I mean, it's even, like I said, the littlest things, like people taking responsibility for their own behaviors and their own thoughts and feelings is like the hardest freaking thing, let alone, you know, the big things that concern everybody.
Yeah, and the worst part is that we don't even
It's sad.
realize that most people don't even realize that they've been conditioned to feel that way. They've been conditioned, and it seems like people, as I put in a post today on the initiative for the song of the night, was, or the song of the evening, was that it's not that we fail to make decisions, it's that we decide against what we feel is desirable, and then we go ahead and we even go so far as to convince ourselves
Justify
that
it.
we don't have a choice,
Yeah.
or that the choice we made is in some way necessary.
Right. 'Cause
We don't have to
even-
do things the same fucking way we always have.
Right.
We don't have to continue making the same mistakes. Trust me, humanity will survive the collapse of the systems we've been using. In fact, it will flourish once we decide that we need to start making serious changes to the way that we've been managing things. And Greta Thunberg is a perfect example of somebody who's stepping up, taking fucking responsibility and working to make that happen.
I agree. I think that even the littlest bit of responsibility it's a good start. 'Cause that's all it boils down to.
Yeah.
Even the smartest, most mature, evolved people have a tiny victim inside them. I mean, that really never goes away. And it just matters. It matters just what choice you make in the moment.
Right, come what may. I mean, again, speaking from my personal perspective, I feel like I'm sabotaged all the time. I feel
You are.
kicked around. You know, I've been kicked around pretty fucking bad. I feel undeserving of even some of the things that I have earned here. But
Is that why you lose everything?
it could be.
I don't deserve it.
That's precisely.
He just goes home and starts throwing
Yeah,
all
and
of
that's
his
a good
possessions around the house. I can't find anything.
Right, that's a good example
funny.
too, is because I'm consistently putting that value in play without knowing it, and that's causing a reaction in my environment, in the world. The world is responding to me based on what I tell it to, what I suggest of it, what I know it to be. And so I feel undeserving of say, you know, a massive wealth perhaps, and so I'm having a fuck ton of trouble getting hired for jobs. I'm losing jobs almost immediately after getting them. And why? Because I have this conditioning in me that's telling me to feel as though perhaps, you know, I don't deserve the consequences of what comes of that. And that's what that's what brings about, again, the thinking backwards or the viewing time in reverse thing, is that it's not going to be it's not going to be the action item that is actually working in this scenario where it comes to the laws of attraction or magnetic compatibility as we've caused it. It's going to be the resulting factor. So when I put the value in play that I don't deserve to be wealthy, that restricts me from achieving what is necessary to become wealthy.
We create our own realities. I think that's a really tough pill for a lot of people to swallow, especially younger people, because it means that you're not a victim.
Right, and we have
scary.
This conditioning as many times I have to point this out, and it doesn't need really an explanation. It's evident. We have a fucking victimization complex growing.
It's more scary to not be a victim than it is to be a victim to some people. That's so scary, because there are people that really are victims.
And that's a cry wolf scenario.
That makes them feel.
Right. People who
I never thought about that before. That's so sad.
People who've been through serious shit, and they're pretty much, honestly, most actual victims who have been through serious shit are not
take
going...
the opposite route.
Yeah, they're going to be strong enough to stand up for themselves and to be, the
strength of will, the test of
character, and strong but silent type, you could say, strong, silent type. In some
cases, look at the tests. It's a test of your character. It's a test of your will, and so that makes sense, actually.
Yeah, so we see a lot of these younger kids, crying about how fucking abused they are.
But really, they have charmed ass lives.
because their dad didn't buy them the newest iPhone, or their mom yelled at them about cleaning up their fucking room or something.
Yeah, just little stuff.
And they're victimized, and it's not. I mean, we can't say that it's their fault, really. There is conditioning in play. There's social programming in play here.
Absolutely.
And the only way to beat it is to use the same technology against it, and to do our very best to point out precisely how it operates. The thing is that, that with this sort of conditioning and indoctrination specifically, there's going to be the cognitive dissonance factor that kicks in, where the brain will shut down and ignore anything that doesn't complement its decided scenario.
Absolutely, there's cognitive
pointing
differences.
It out doesn't work.
There's cognitive dissonance, but people overcome that every day, I think, in little ways. And even the littlest thing, if you can overcome cognitive dissonance in one subject, maybe it's not your whole life or your whole personality or your whole character. If it's one thing, then that's pretty freaking impressive. I think that's a strong thing to do, to overcome that cognitive dissonance.
Especially something so big as your habitual behaviors, which again,
that's a harder one.
Kudos to 111, man. You're badass.
That's a harder one.
I see us going far there with that. Keep at it, man. Keep commenting.
The cruel game is that it keeps happening.
How do you mean?
Once let's say, a subject overcomes a cognitive dissonance in many aspects of their personality and their existence and their general well-being or whatever, then it's just a matter of time before you're playing that game again.
Right.
You forget and remember and forget and remember, and that's just the game. That's the game we're playing.
But that's why I say
we're here.
It's all a matter of training, really. It's like I suppose you could say a differential here is going to be whether you are trained or conditioned. Are you conditioned by, it's like nature versus nurture? Are you being reactive, or are you being creative? Coming back to that, the specific, the reactive and creative are the same words with a couple letters switched around. It's have you been conditioned by your environment, by the people around you? Have you decided to be who you are, essentially? Do you know who you are, in the sense that you have decidedly become this person and you are taking responsibility for the values that make up your personality.
Right.
And so, I mean, because if you make a decision to alter something in your life, you overcome that cognitive dissonance and you break through, then eventually that becomes the habit, that becomes the pattern.
Yeah,
so how
hopefully, I mean, ideally, absolutely, but again...
To what extent are the habits that make up your person? Because you are an inhabited being. That's what makes you happen. You are habits.
And habits form over time, so you can do that over and over again. Really, I mean, environment changes, people change, so you could be taking responsibility and making yourself who you are one day, and then 5 years from now, something is your life is totally different. And maybe it starts all over again. I think that's the funniest thing, because it just keeps going on forever. It's infinite.
No, I think we just found the basis of this scenario, this particular investigation. We began with environmental activism and Greta Thunberg, but this isn't about Greta Thunberg, is it? And this is an instance where, again, the world is speaking through us, and it's delivering a message through us that we were heretofore unaware of until this very moment, wherein it becomes evident that this series of videos that we're doing here is actually about environmental crisis as regards our environment as a...
That's fucking beautiful. That is fucking beautiful.
Right.
It's it is a crisis. That is hilarious,
It
because
is.
I have been personally, in my life, in my personal experience, literally gawked at, gasped at, for insinuating that somebody could change their mind or change the way that they feel about something. That's something that's wholly untouchable to younger people now, is that they couldn't possibly change how they feel about something.
Right.
I can possibly, I mean, gawked, like
Because it's
literal gawked, because
it's not a choice.
It's not a choice, right?
You don't have any choices.
I don't have any
in
responsibilities. You made me feel a certain way.
Right.
And if I were to suggest possibly changing your mind, then it's like the freaking end of the world. What? Like, I'm speaking some alien language, and it's so funny, because I remember doing that exact thing. Probably to you.
Yeah, I don't recall you having done it so much. You were one of the more impressive people.
But it's so funny.
But yeah, you definitely did to some extent. It took a little convincing.
And a lot of times, not even convincing, sometimes it just takes time.
Yeah.
Time makes...
And patience and love,
Absolutely.
caring,
Time makes
unconditional
a
investment.
huge difference that, you might not even have to work at anything, because the person that you're trying to get through to, as time goes on, will naturally feel more confident in taking those responsibilities, like changing the way that you feel about something, which you absolutely can do.
I can and are heavily advised to. It's very highly suggested that you do, in fact, decide consistently, because that's really the only thing you have to do here. That's the only game in town, making decisions, making choices, and we are essentially, by this in particular, total environmental crisis insofar as regards the environment of our very reality itself.
Absolutely.
We are being robbed of our choices, our ability to choose, and where does that come from? Again, anybody who's paying attention, where does that idea come from?
Are you referring to, like, the politics thing?
To the idea that we do not have choices, that we're not.
Okay, so is it
choosing.
a matter of, the choices being, quote, taken away or removed, or you forfeiting them altogether because you can't handle it and you don't want that responsibility? Because I feel like that's kind of more the case.
That's exactly what it is. You can't have your choices. I mean, in certain cases, of course, you can be placed in situations where you're not given a choice.
Absolutely. That's not.
As regards your person and who you are, how you decide to react to things, to experience things, where does this concept of having your responsibility removed from you, and where does that come from and why? It comes from an ultimate authority figure, and
Whether
you
it's-
being subject to reward and penalty based on it.
Absolutely. I was just reading about something the other day. The moral deserts is what it's called. Is when you act in accordance with like an ethical regulation. What is the word? When you act in accordance with in an ethical manner, just because there was going to be some kind of reward for you at the end of that tunnel,
Right.
And that's,
Does that make it ethical?
right? And I would say, in my personal opinion, not so much.
Essentially, if you behave, if you convict yourself to some ethical standard based
yes.
simply on a reward or penalty, that's amoral, really.
Which again, environment, at first, it ends up being, like you said, this authority figure. At first is what? A parent, goes on to be a teacher or principal, and then police officers and judges and Supreme Court and politicians, and then eventually all the way up the ladder is the Almighty.
Is religion and that fucking book and that fucking suggestion that you are being judged and could very well be damned. It's
when the symbology there is kind of right on, because you, in a way, could very well be damned by walking around every day, punishing yourself in your own head, thinking that you're a pile of shit, etc.,
forfeiting your ability
That
to be.
is freaking damned if I've ever seen it. You know what I'm saying? That's a fucking shit existence.
Yeah, and like we were saying before, which I'm going to go ahead and say now that we've recognized the actual value behind this scenario, that we don't have to focus on Greta Thunberg, we can move on to some of the other provisions we've been granted, such as this Rose of Dawn character who we were watching this video by. Rose of Dawn. She's outstanding.
Yeah,
Check out
I
Rose.
like
I'll
her
put a
a
link
lot.
for Rose of Dawn.
I've just started
channel here.
watching her videos. I think I've watched like 2 or 3 of them, and she's amazing.
Yeah,
I
she's
love her.
incredible.
Yeah.
And as we were saying, watching one of her videos, what's going on here specifically with the gender identification fixation is this detachment, and with the values that are being put into play with this detachment complex is exactly that, a detachment complex. They are essentially building robots, psychologically building robotic identities, robotic
Duplicates,
persons,
a
to
duplicate to wear your skin and
Right.
have all of your
to live vicariously through this fixated
Image.
identity obsession. And it's very, not taking a look at it, it's very vain.
It's really weird.
It's very vain. It's very, well, I mean, what
on
what
the
is
face
it?
of it, it is. But if you consider of where that came from,
But think about it. It's very vain. It's
crazy.
very removed. It's very immature. It's very resembling of that initial God figure we're presented with religion, isn't it? And then there's the idea that we are born in sin, that introducing the concept that we are born damned and that we have to be fighting to redeem ourselves in some way, that sets us in a position where right straight out the gate we're fighting to prove ourselves in some way, and then we're given these ethical standards by which we need to prove ourselves, and
then we'll
there
get
we
our
go,
moral
off to the
dessert.
races.
Exactly, and then
Yeah.
we receive your moral desserts after you die or whatever.
Yeah, and that is the environment. That is the environment in which we live. That's the environment we are existing in, the actual reality. The
headspace-wise,
substance that's making up
absolutely.
our very reality. That's the time. That is our time. And that's indicative of how we are spending it, what we are investing it into and what we are ultimately purchasing.
It's really crazy.
So,
anyways,
yeah, what were we
we
talking about with this guy?
derailed
Yeah.
quite a bit there.
But I think we went on the right track.
Oh, we covered a lot of bases.
I like to start these videos by dealing with a very palpable,
This is kind of a long one.
tangible, real-world
we'll
example
skip off of this one maybe.
instead of abstract reasoning.
Oh, okay. Tangible, real
When you
world
open
example.
a can of carbonated water, fizzy water, if you sip it, it tastes different from flat water, from water that came out of a bottle that never was carbonated. Set the two bottles to one side and wait while all of the bubbles disappear. Taste them both again. They still taste different. It's not just the bubbles. It's not just the carbonation. Carbonated water is made more acidic through the process of carbonation, through exposure to carbon, even after the water has settled down, even after the bubbles have left and evaporated. The same thing happens to the oceans. Acid oceans, or ocean acidification, is one of the least discussed aspects of climate change today. It's one of the most irreparable and insoluble. And the reason why people aren't talking about it is because it's not easily manufactured into a civilization-threatening crisis. If humanity now sits by and does nothing and allows the oceans to become more and more acidic, it will wipe out all of the coral reefs on planet Earth. That'll be the first thing to disappear. It'll wipe out almost all of the large fish species. As I understand it, jellyfish will do okay. Tiny single-cell organisms will be okay. There will be kind of winners and losers, but marine life as we know it will cease to exist.
I need to point out
Human civilization will be fine.
that being presented as a problem here, I was unaware of that, but that being presented as a problem also speaks to the nature of the imperative, where we've been speaking about this macrocosmic kundalini awakening, or the activation of the macrocosmic impulse of humanity and
Planet-wise?
in the phase. Yeah, when you do activate that impulse, your body will naturally become more alkaline and be more it'll be nourished more by alkaline foods or alkaline substances.
That's something that pops up a lot in, like, if you are looking up or investigating ways to deal with health problems naturally instead of taking like medications, the whole pH thing pops up a lot.
And that's because there's nothing supernatural or even really outstanding about this kundalini impulse training, or the very concept of it. It is essentially our default measure.